Everyone here, is this channel definitely private?
Yeah, I set it up separate from the main Discord. Guild leader doesn't have access.
I still can't believe we're doing this. We've been in this guild for 3 years.
Which is why we have to do this. The guild is bleeding members. We've lost 15 people in 2 months because of his decisions.
He's not listening to any feedback. Every officer meeting turns into him yelling at us for questioning him.
And the loot distribution is completely unfair. His friends get everything. The rest of us are told to wait our turn.
But he founded the guild. It's his guild. Are we really going to take it from him?
It stopped being his guild the moment he put officers in place. We built this community too. We recruit, we organize raids, we handle drama. He just makes bad decisions and expects us to clean up the mess.
So what's the plan? How do we actually do this?
Tomorrow night during the raid, we call a guild meeting after. We present the issues publicly. We give him a chance to step down voluntarily.
And if he refuses?
Then we vote. All officers are with us, right? That's 6 votes to remove him versus his 1 vote to stay.
He's going to freak out. He'll try to demote all of us before we can vote.
That's why we do it during the meeting when everyone's online. If he tries to demote us, the whole guild sees it, and we've already talked to the core raiders. If he kicks us, they're leaving with us.
Nuclear option, we take the whole roster and start a new guild.
It won't come to that. Most of the guild wants him gone too. They're just afraid to say it.
Okay, tomorrow night, we give him the chance to step down gracefully. If he refuses, we vote him out. If he tries to fight it, we take everyone who wants to leave and we start fresh.
This is really happening. We're staging a coup.
We're saving the guild. There's a difference.
Welcome back to MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask. I'm Boss Mode, and today we're talking about guild coups, when officers and members overthrow leadership from within. These are internal revolutions, palace intrigue, and power struggles that can save guilds or destroy them. Let's explore the politics of virtual organizations. Before we get into the legendary coups, let's talk about why they happen and what drives people to overthrow leaders they once followed. Guild coups don't happen overnight. They're a result of accumulated frustration, failed leadership, and officer consensus that things can't continue the way they are. Let's break down the common causes. Cause 1 is the absent leader, the guild leader that stops showing up. They log in once a week, miss raids, aren't available for decisions, but they won't step down or hand over control. Officers are running everything but don't have the authority to make official changes. The frustration builds because they're doing all the work without the recognition or power. Eventually, officers decide if they're running the guild anyway, they might as well make it official. Cause number 2 is the tyrant. The guild leader makes unilateral decisions, refuses feedback, punishes dissent. My guild, my rules becomes their mantra. Officers are treated as servants rather than leadership team. This creates resentment. People who've invested years into building the community feel disrespected. The coup becomes about restoring dignity and collaborative leadership. Cause number 3 is the incompetent leader. The guild leader means well, but is making terrible decisions. Wrong strategies, poor recruitment, bad scheduling, and ineffective policies. The guild is declining under their leadership, and they can't or won't adapt. Officers who can see the guild dying feel obligated to act. Cause 4 is the corrupt leader favoritism, loot hoarding, using guild resources for personal benefit, and then lying to members. The leader is actively harming the guild for personal gain. This is the easiest coup to justify morally. You're removing someone who betrayed the community's trust. Cause 5 is the ideological split. The guild leader wants to take the guild in a direction that officers disagree with. Casual to hardcore, PvE to PvP, competitive to social. The vision has changed, and half of the leadership doesn't agree. The coup is about preserving the guild's original identity or pushing it in a new direction the leader won't accept. Cause 6 is the power-hungry officers. Sometimes the coup isn't justified. Officers want more power, prestige, and control. They use legitimate grievances as cover for a personal power grab. This is the dark side. Not every coup is noble. Some are just ambitious people seizing an opportunity. The psychology of planning a coup is complex. You're plotting against someone you've worked with, maybe been friends with. That creates cognitive dissonance. People rationalize it. I'm doing this for the guild, not for me. They left us no choice, and the community needs this. I'm the one who really built this place anyway. Some of these rationalizations are true. Some are self-serving. Often it's a mix. The secrecy adds stress. You're having parallel conversations, the official officer meetings where you pretend everything's fine, and the secret coup planning meetings where you're organizing to overthrow them. That deception weighs on people. And there's the fear of failure. If the coup fails, you're out. You've burned bridges. You'll probably get kicked, and your friends who stayed loyal to the leader will see you as a traitor. The stakes are high. Coups require coordination and trust. You need enough officers on board that the vote succeeds. You need assurance that people won't back out or leak the plan. You need to time it perfectly. And you need the moral high ground. The successful coup requires community to support. If the guild sees you as saving them from bad leadership, you succeed. If they see you as a power-hungry backstabber, you fail even if you technically win the vote. That's why most coups frame themselves as necessary interventions. We didn't want to do this, but the guild was dying. Whether that's true or manipulation depends on the specific situation. All right, let's get into the stories. These are guild coups that became infamous for their execution, their consequences, and their sheer audacity. Story 1 comes from the World of Warcraft. A top 50 raiding guild had a guild leader who'd founded the guild 6 years earlier, but over time he'd become increasingly autocratic. Officers had no real power. They were figureheads who executed his decisions. The guild was succeeding despite him, not because of him. Officers were doing all of the work: recruitment, strategy, scheduling, and member management. He just showed up to raids and made pronouncements. The breaking point came when he unilaterally changed the loot system to give himself priority on all legendary items. Not because he deserved them mechanically, but because, as the guild leader, I've earned them. The officers held a secret vote among themselves. 6 officers voted to remove him. 1 abstained. They prepared a plan. During a scheduled guild meeting, they presented a formal motion: transition to democratic leadership with a council of officers making decisions collectively. The guild leader would become Guild Founder Emeritus, a title with no power. They had drafted a constitution, detailed rules how the guild would operate, how officers would be elected, how decisions would be made. It was remarkably professional. The guild leader tried to reject it. The officers asked for a guild-wide vote. He refused. So the officers announced that if the vote wasn't allowed, they were leaving and starting a new guild. Every single raider except the guild leader's 2 IRL friends voted to stay with the officers. The guild leader was given a choice: accept the new structure or lose everyone. He chose option 3, rage quit, and deleted the guild in spite. But the officers had already created a new guild. Within 24 hours, they'd transferred everyone over. Same roster, new name, democratic leadership. The coup succeeded completely. The new guild went on to become a top 20 world guild. The old leader's attempt to take revenge by deleting the guild just proved the officers were right to remove him. EVE Online coups are legendary because the stakes are real. Billions of ISK, territory, and years of accumulated assets. This one involved a corporation that controlled valuable moon mining operations. The CEO had been running things for 2 years, but he had become increasingly absent and paranoid. He trusted no one, gave no one access to corp assets, and made all decisions alone. The directors staged a coup. They found a mechanic in EVE's corporate structure. If enough directors voted, they could propose a CEO vote. With enough shares held by directors, they could force a leadership change. They spent months quietly accumulating shares. They recruited allies, made promises, and coordinated timing. When they struck, it was swift. A director called for a CEO vote. The current CEO tried to countervote, but the directors had majority shares, so the vote passed. With the new CEO installed, the old CEO was immediately stripped of roles and ejected from the corporation. But here's where it gets interesting. EVE's mechanics meant the old CEO still owned the corporation's physical assets, stations, ships, and modules. The new leadership couldn't access them because ownership hadn't transferred. The old CEO, enraged, destroyed everything, billions of ISK worth of assets deleted. Then he biomassed his character, permanently deleted it, so it couldn't be hunted for revenge. The coup succeeded in removing him, but at the cost of the corporation's entire wealth. It took them a year to rebuild. But the community rallied around the new leadership specifically because the old CEO's destruction proved he was unfit to lead. This one is from Final Fantasy. A free company had a leader who was well-meaning but incompetent. Nice person, terrible leader. The FC was casual when half of the members wanted progression. The leader refused to adapt. Officers tried to suggest changes. The leader took it as a personal criticism and refused. Officers tried to organize progression teams within the FC. The leader felt threatened and shut it down. Finally, 5 officers had a meeting. They decided they couldn't change the leader's mind, and they couldn't keep sacrificing their enjoyment of the game for a community that wasn't serving their needs. They didn't stage a coup, they staged an exodus. All 5 officers, plus 20 members they'd recruited and befriended over years, left simultaneously. They formed a new FC focused on progression rating. The old FC didn't die immediately. The leader tried to rebuild, but they had lost their core community, their best players, and their officer team. Within 3 months, the FC was shut down to 8 members. The leader posted on Reddit calling the officers traitors and snakes. The community largely sided with the officers. They tried to work within the system, been rejected, and left peacefully. That's not a coup, that's a migration. But the effect was the same. Leadership changed through mass departure. The old FC effectively ended, and the new FC thrived. This shows the nuclear option. If you can't change leadership, you can take everyone willing to leave and start fresh. It's not overthrowing the leader, it's abandoning their ship. This one's sneaky. A guild in Guild Wars 2 had a leader who was toxic but had founded the guild and had all the controls. Officers couldn't vote him out because he'd structured the guild to prevent that. So they got creative. They created a sister guild, supposedly for alts and social members. The guild leader approved it, even promoted it in the main guild. Over 6 months, officers quietly recruited the main guild's best players into the sister guild. Hey, move your alt over here. We're doing social events, but really they were building a parallel community. They also slowly moved important resources to the sister guild. Materials, gold, organized groups. They were hollowing out the main guild. When they were ready, they announced that the sister guild was now the main guild. Anyone who wanted a healthy community was welcome. The toxic leader could keep the original guild name, but it was just him and a few loyalists. The main guild died within a week. The sister guild became the real community. The coup succeeded through misdirection. They didn't overthrow the leader, they made him irrelevant. The leader tried to get ArenaNet involved, claiming theft, but nothing was stolen. People chose to leave. And the resources were moved with proper permissions. It was all technically legitimate. This shows that sometimes the best coup is the one that doesn't look like a coup. This one's a twist. A wild guild had a tyrannical leader. Officers staged a coup. They presented their grievances publicly, called for a vote, and with majority officer support, removed the guild leader. The old leader was demoted to member. New member installed. Everything seemed successful. But the old leader wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, he worked on members individually. He apologized, promised to do better, played the victim. I founded this guild and they stabbed me in the back. He worked on people's guilt and loyalty. He made promises. And crucially, he paid people in-game gold to support him. 2 weeks after the coup, during a guild meeting, the old leader called for a vote of no confidence in the new leadership. He flipped enough members that the vote succeeded. The officers who had led the coup were removed. The old leader was reinstated. Then he immediately kicked every single person who had supported the coup. 20 people gone in 5 minutes. The counter-coup succeeded through social manipulation and bribery. It split the guild permanently. Half the roster left voluntarily rather than stay under someone who would execute purges. This shows that coups can be reversed if the old leadership is politically savvy enough. And it shows that coups can create cycles of retribution that destroy communities. Not all coups are morally ambiguous. This one is from ESO, was clearly justified. A guild leader was embezzling. The guild ran a trader that generated millions of gold. Members contributed materials and gold, but the guild leader was pocketing the profits instead of reinvesting in the guild. Officers discovered this through bank logs. The leader had been transferring gold to alt accounts for months. When confronted privately, he lied and said it was for guild investments. It wasn't. Officers documented everything, screenshots, logs, transaction histories. Then they held a guild meeting, presented the evidence publicly, and called for an immediate vote. The vote was 48-1 to remove him. The one was him voting for himself. He was demoted and kicked. Officers seized control of the guild bank, recovered what they could, and installed a new system with multiple people required to approve large transactions. The old leader threatened legal action, claiming they'd stolen his gold, but the guild log showed it was member contributions, not his personal wealth. He had no case. The coup had an overwhelming support because the moral case was clear. The leader had betrayed the community's trust for personal gain. The coup was restoring justice, not seizing power. Not all coups succeed. This one from WoW shows what happens when the planning fails. 3 officers in a casual guild wanted it to turn to hardcore. The guild leader wanted to stay casual. Officers figured they had the support to remove her. They called for a guild meeting, presented their case for going hardcore, and asked the guild to vote on new leadership that would pursue that direction. The vote failed badly. Only 3 officers and 5 other members voted for the change. Everyone else voted to keep the current leader and stay casual. The 3 officers had completely misjudged the guild's desires. They'd been in an echo chamber with a few hardcore players and assumed everyone felt that way. The guild leader gracefully accepted their apology and let them stay, but their credibility was destroyed. Members saw them as power-hungry officers who tried to hijack the guild. The 3 officers eventually left out of embarrassment. This shows that coups require accurate assessment of support. If you misjudge the community's desires, you fail spectacularly and publicly. Let's talk about ethics. When is a coup justified? When is it just a power grab? Where are the moral lines? Justified reasons for a coup. Number 1 is corruption or abuse. If the leader is stealing, lying, abusing members, or violating the guild's stated values, removing them is justified. You're protecting the community. Number 2 is incompetence or causing decline. If the guild is dying under their leadership and they refuse to adapt or step aside, intervention may be necessary. But you need to make sure the decline is their fault and not just natural attrition. Number 3 is abandonment. If the leader is gone and won't hand over control, the officers doing the actual work have justification to take over power. They're just formalizing reality. Number 4 is betrayal of founding principles. If the guild was founded with certain values and the leader is violating those values, a coup can be restoring the original vision. This is tricky because visions can change legitimately. Here are a few unjustified reasons. Number 1, personal ambition. If you want to be the leader for ego or status, this is a power grab, not a necessary intervention. Number 2 is policy disagreements. You disagree with the direction, but the community supports the leader. Your disagreement doesn't justify a coup, it justifies leaving. Number 3 is revenge. The leader slighted you personally, and you're using institutional power for personal vendetta. This is abuse of your officer position. And number 4 is impatience. Things are moving too slowly or too cautiously for your taste. That's not a leadership failure, that's a difference in tempo. The process matters as much as the reason. Even a justified coup can be wrong if executed badly. Ethical coup procedures. Give the leader a chance to address grievances before moving to remove them. Present evidence and specific examples, not vague complaints. Hold transparent votes where the community can see what's happening. Offer the leader a graceful exit option. Don't destroy guild assets or sabotage on your way out. Respect members' choice to stay or leave. Here are some unethical coup procedures: plotting in secret without ever giving the leader a chance to improve, making up or exaggerating complaints to justify the coup, rigging votes or excluding people who disagree, publicly humiliating the leader beyond what's necessary, scorched earth tactics, destroying what you can't control, and forcing people to choose sides through intimidation. There's also the question of ownership. Who owns a guild? The person who clicked create guild and paid for the charter, or the collective community that built it? Legally, in most games, the guild leader has ultimate control. It's their guild by game mechanics. But morally, if a community of 50 people have invested years into building something, do they have no say when the technical owner makes destructive decisions? This is why many successful guilds have constitutions or bylaws. They created agreed upon rules for leadership changes, voting procedures, and officer responsibilities. These prevent coups by making leadership changes a structured process. But most guilds don't have that. Most guilds operate on trust and good intentions until those break down. So how do guild leaders try to protect themselves from coups, and why do these protections often backfire? Method 1 is limited officer powers. Only give officers enough permission to do their jobs, never enough to threaten your position. Can't demote you, can't access guild bank, and can't change important settings. The backfire: this makes officers feel untrusted and impotent. You're creating the resentment that leads to coups, and determined officers will just leave and take people with them. Method 2 is divide and conquer. Keep officers from forming united opposition. Give different officers competing responsibilities, play them against each other, and maintain personal loyalty to you rather than to each other. The backfire is that this creates a toxic officer team and doesn't collaborate well. The guild suffers from internal competition, and eventually the officers realize they're being manipulated and unite against you. Method 3 is loyalist officers. Only promote people who you are personally loyal to. IRL friends, longtime supporters, people who owe you favors. The backfire is you get yes men who won't give you honest feedback. The guild stagnates because no one challenges bad decisions, and competent players leave because they see promotion is about loyalty, not merit. Method 4 is cult of personality. Make yourself indispensable. Only I can do this. Only I have the connections, and only I know how things run. Create dependency. The backfire is you're actually indispensable. You'll burn out. If you're not, people will figure that out and realize you're replaceable. And this tactic breeds resentment. Method 5, rapid purges. At the first sign of dissent, kick the person immediately. Create fear through ruthlessness. Backfire: you create an environment of paranoia where no one feels safe. Good people leave before you can kick them, and you might purge the wrong person and trigger an exodus you were trying to prevent. Method 6, democratic legitimacy. Regular officer elections, transparent voting, constitutional rules. Make yourself accountable to the community. Works, this actually helps. If you're a good leader serving the community, you'll keep getting elected. If you're not, you'll lose gracefully under established rules. Coups become unnecessary because there's a legitimate process. Method 7, shared power. Don't try to control everything. Empower officers, delegate authority. Share decision making. Make the leadership distributed. This works if officers have real power and responsibility. They're invested in the system working. They're less likely to overthrow something they're a part of, and if you do need to step down, transition is smooth. The irony is the tactics that best prevent coups are the ones that require giving up the absolute power leaders are trying to protect. Leaders who try to consolidate power to prevent coups make coups more likely. Leaders who share power willingly make coups unnecessary. But sharing power requires trust and ego management. You have to be okay with not being the sole authority. Many guild leaders can't do that. What happens after the coup? Let's talk about the consequences, successful and failed. Successful coup. Best case, the new leadership is actually better. The guild stabilizes and grows. Members who left come back. The community thrives. The old leader either leaves gracefully or accepts their new role. This requires the coup was justified and the community knows it. The new leadership is competent and addresses the old problems. Minimal vindictiveness or purges. Focus on moving forward rather than rehashing the past. Example, the Democratic uprising story. New leadership worked, guild improved, everyone except the tyrant was happier. Successful coup, moderate case, the new leadership is about the same as the old. Some problems are fixed, new problems emerge. The community is divided. Some supported the coup, some didn't. There's tension, but the guild survives. This is probably the most common outcome. Coups rarely produce dramatic improvement because leadership is hard regardless of who's doing it. Successful coup, worst case, the new leadership is worse, or the coup was never about improving the guild. Power-hungry officers fighting among themselves. Purges of anyone who supported the old leader. The guild becomes more toxic than before. This proves the coup was a mistake, but by then, the damage is done. The community often splinters permanently. And on a failed coup, the best case, the coup fails, but the grievances were legitimate. The guild leader listens, makes changes, and the officers who tried to coup are forgiven. The guild improves because the attempted coup was a wake-up call. This requires remarkable maturity from both sides, rare but possible. And on a failed coup, worst case, the coup fails. And there's a purge. Everyone involved gets kicked. The guild splits. Accusations fly. Drama spreads across the server. Both the original guild and any splinter guilds are weakened. Nobody wins. The community is destroyed. Relationships end. People quit the game. The long-term effects of coups extend beyond the immediate leadership change. There's trust damage. Even successful coups create paranoia. If it happened once, could it happen again? New leaders worry about their own officers plotting. Officers worry about being seen as disloyal for any disagreement. In the cultural shift, coups establish that leadership can be challenged. This can be healthy. It keeps leaders accountable, or it can be toxic. Constant power struggles become the norm. Community memory. Coups become guild lore. Remember when we overthrew soft to touch? The story gets retold. Details change. Sides are picked retroactively. The coup defines the guild's identity. Then there's precedence. Once a coup succeeds, it's easier for the next one. Well, we did it to the old leader, so coups can become the guild's method of handling leadership problems instead of a last resort. The exodus risk. After any coup, people leave. Some supported the old leader and won't stay under new leadership. Some are just tired of the drama. The community loses members regardless of the outcome. The healthiest guilds are the ones that never need coups because they have legitimate processes for leadership feedback and transition. But most guilds aren't that organized, so coups remain the nuclear option when normal channels fail. Guild coups are what happens when leadership and community are out of sync, and there's no legitimate way to fix it. They're revolutions in miniature, palace intrigue in virtual worlds. If you're a guild leader, remember that your position is of responsibility, not a crown. Serve the community, listen to feedback, share power, make yourself replaceable by building strong officers. That's how you prevent coups, by making them unnecessary. If you're an officer considering a coup, make absolutely sure it's justified and necessary. Try every other option first, and if you do proceed, do it ethically and transparently. The community will judge you by your process as much as your reasons. Guilds are communities held together by voluntary association. When leadership fails that community, something has to give. Sometimes that's a coup. Sometimes that's an exodus. Sometimes it's the death of the guild. Next week on MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask, on episode 41, we're diving into teabagging and emote spam, the language of disrespect. You definitely don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and support the podcast. And if you've got a guild coup story, led one, survived one, or watched one unfold, email us at podcast@mmomadness.com. Until then, lead with integrity, question with respect, and remember, power is a trust, not a right. I'm Boss Mode, and thanks for listening.